Well, we've got a story and an animatic. It's like the skeleton of our short film. And now we have to start getting specific. Like, what the heck is this thing going to look like? So there's really three big pieces to the puzzle. The plant/vines thing, the building, and the environment, the desert. Let's start with the environment, since we'll need that anyway to get some lighting and reflections to, kind of show up on our two main actors, the plant and the building. So let's just do it. Let's hop into Cinema 4D. I've already made a copy of the first shot scene, and here it is. And one of the great things about working this way is that we've already figured out where the camera is going to be and how far away all this stuff is from the camera. And so a lot of the decisions about how much detail we need to add and all that kind of stuff have already been made. And that's really important because, for example, if we were going to be flying over the tops of these mountains and flying through them, we'd need them to be a lot more detailed and probably a lot more specific in terms of their shape. All right, so let's start by dealing with the ground. Now, I want that low poly look for the ground. I want like some lumps and I want it to feel faceted. And I'm just going to open up a new project here. The basics of the low poly look, right, are, you've got a shape, which on the surface, you can see all these little polygons, right? You can see them all. And let me actually go ahead and just bring the segments down. When I render this, it still looks perfect, right? And now we've actually got a render perfect setting on the sphere, so let's turn that off. But even with render perfect turned off, it still looks smooth, right? Well, basically what you do is you delete this Fong tag. Just kill it, right? And now there's no more smoothing. You get that nice low poly look. You're done, right? And the rest is just lighting, compositing, texturing, modeling, all the easy stuff. So what I'm going to do is create, I need to basically lumpify this a little bit and make it feel a little less even. Now here's the problem. Here's the ground, and let me go into my isometric views here for a second. If we look at this ground, it's enormous, right? This scene is very big. I have to zoom way, 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 way in here. If I want to look at the building, for example, right? The building is like way here, and it's tiny compared to everything else. You've got, here's the building, and then you got to go way out, and then here's the mountains, and here's the ground. So the problem is, if I want this ground to get a little lumpy, and let's say I want to take, the way I would typically do that is just take a displacer deformer. Let me go ahead and delete this Fong tag that's on there. And in the displacer deformer, I'm going to go to shading and just add some noise, all right? And what that's going to do, I'm going to do this quite a bit, I have a feeling, is jump into a fresh cinema project so I can demonstrate stuff a little bit easier before we go back to the big project. What you're doing is you're putting the displacer on a plane, right? This is what our floor is going to be made out of, and we'll put some noise on there, and boom, it's going to displace, that plane. And if I turn off the Fong tag, you get this nice, interesting kind of low poly ground. And you can then adjust the settings on the displacer, and you can go into the shading tab, and you can change the scale, make it bigger. I can make it a lot bigger. So you can get kind of more, like a little bit more of a uniform kind of, not every polygon's facing a different direction. So the problem is this plane is very small, so it's easy to see what's going on here. This plane is friggin' huge. So if I turn the displacer on, even if I crank it, it's like everything's too big, right? There's just not enough detail to it. And I would have to crank this setting up probably as high as it will go. It won't even go above 1,000. So if I go 1,000 by 1,000, I'm still not getting the detail I want. And now this scene is going to start to chug, right? So this isn't working, okay? Having this giant ground that covers everything just isn't the right approach. So what I'm going to have to do is kind of on a shot-by-shot basis figure out how big this ground needs to be. So let me just turn the displacer off for a second, and let's take the ground here. And what I'm going to do, let's go to the ending here, okay? And let's just scale this sucker down. Let me turn the width segments down to like 200 and the height to 200, okay? So we're not killing Cinema 4D here. So look, like on this last shot, This little sliver is all I need, like to cover all of the ground that's in the frame. All I need is that. Now at the beginning here, probably need a little bit more, right? But even then, because I've got such a wide angle here, I mean, that floor goes almost all the way to the horizon, so I can make it a little bit longer just to kind of be safe. But, you know, let me make this view bigger. You can see that even just that seemingly little floor that we just created, that will actually cover the frame. Let me just do a quick render and make sure that there's not like a gap between the floor, oh, and it's not rendering because I'm still in the software renderer mode. Let me go to standard here. And actually what I want to do, let me switch this to hardware because that's what we ended up using for this play blast setting. We changed it after we did the first shot, and we changed it so we could see the shadows on it. I'm going to make a new setting, or actually I'm just going to rename this one, and we're just going to call this, let's say, basic crappy render. Okay? And for basic crappy, I'm just going to have the standard renderer, anti-aliasing set to geometry, just so I can do some quick little renders. Okay, so now you're seeing there is a gap there. All right, so I either need to make the ground longer so it reaches closer to the horizon, or I can just cheat. I can just take the mountains and just nudge them down a tiny bit, you know, and right about there it looks like they should intersect with the horizon. Cool. Visually it looks fine, and that's really all we need. So now that I've got the ground laid out, and I have my display set to garage shading lines, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my filter, and I want to turn off the grid so that I'm not getting confused by the world grid. I can just look at the floor, right? There we go. So we now have enough floor to cover up our whole scene, and I can then just go ahead and up these segments to get more resolution. So let's try 400, 400. All right, and I think I need to up the width a little bit more so they're roughly square shaped. Cool. And now I can turn the displacer on, and I've got that thing cranked. So let's turn that down pretty low. Let's try like 5. No, not 165, 5. There we go. All right, and let's just do a quick render. Cool. So you can see you're getting like some nice variation, and we'll put a little texture on that and make it a little nicer. And then when we get over here, all right, so now we've got a problem. So that displacer is actually going to be hitting, it's going to be covering up the camera, unfortunately. So we can figure out, there might be some setting like there, right? Like if just by lowering it just a little bit, I was able to get rid of that. I also could have moved the camera up a little bit. It wouldn't have been the end of the world. And it's really not going to change the look of this too much. If I wanted this to really have some variation, right? Like if I wanted this at like a 6 or 7, then what I might have to do is come over here and go to this ending camera, and I might just have to like lift it up a little bit, which again isn't the end of the world, and then just pan down just a tiny bit, okay? Now at this with this shot here, now this is feeling a little bit lumpy. So, you know, I'm going to kind of just split the difference here. Let's take this down to like 5. There we go. All right, so now we get a little bit of variation here, and it does kind of give it like a nice kind of landscapey feel. But then when we're flying over the top of it, right, you still get some nice variation, you know, but it's not going crazy. All right, now here, we are going through the ground for a moment, so that's not going to work. All right, so I may have to actually take this down a little bit. We're doing a little balancing act here. If I bring that back down to 3, and I think that'll work, okay? So now we don't intersect that ground anymore. All right, we still have some nice variation, and we'll use a texture to get even more variation out of it. All right, so there's that. And now we need to do the mountains. So I just used these pyramids to kind of rough out the mountains. And you know what I want is I want them to kind of be like craggly and gnarly and have some interesting kind of features to them. And I want to be able to just sculpt that in a really easy way. So here's a pretty simple trick. What you can do is you can take a sphere. All right, and I want to make sure I can see the polygons of it. And I'm going to change the type to icosahedron. And there's other kinds you could do too. An octahedron might work better, but I think an icosahedron will work. And what it's cool because it's going to give it these triangles, which are going to look a little less regular than something like this, which is important if you're doing something organic like a mountain. Next thing I want to do is make this sucker editable. And then I'm going to grab, I'm going to go into points mode. I'm going to come down here. I want to make sure that I don't have only select visible elements on. And I just want to delete the bottom half of this thing. There we go. And you know, these little points here, that's fine. I'm not too concerned with that. And then I want to run the optimize command on it so that I can get rid of any extra points that were lingering around. And then I want to go into my axis center tool, and I want to push the axis down to whatever the bottom is of this, right? And it's pretty much right in the middle, so I didn't really need to do that, but it's a good habit to get into. Now what I can do is I can go into point mode or polygon mode, it doesn't really matter, and I'm going to hit M to bring up my modeling tools, and I'm going to use the brush, which is the C key, right? If you didn't know about this, this is the quick way to get to your modeling tools. Hit M, don't touch your mouse. If you move your mouse, it goes away, and then hit whatever tool you want, and I want the brush. And I'm going to turn the radius down a little bit. And what this brush lets you do is just push and pull stuff around, okay? I'm going to take the Fong tag off this guy, as you can imagine. And now I've got this cool little mountain starting to form. Now, you can also hold the, you can kind of push and pull these things. And if you hold the command key, it'll actually do the opposite. So this will pull, right? And if I hold command, it'll actually do the opposite. Which on this tool doesn't really make a difference, but on some of the brush tools, you can actually, you know, it's actually very handy to be able to hold the command key and do the opposite kind of, you know, operation on your model. All right, so I'm just kind of basically roughing this thing out. I want to make sure I don't have any weird little like holes in it, you know. So if something looks weird, I'm just gonna kind of just tweak it. You know, like this edge here is getting a little weird. I want to pull this guy out, pull this point out a little bit. And I may end up subdividing this thing again and getting a little bit more detail out of it. But, you know, something like that for about like, you know, 30 seconds of noodling. It's kind of an interesting looking rock formation. This looks weird. I don't like this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to manually, I'm going to grab my knife tool and I'm just going to connect those 2 points and cut an edge. So I'm just giving myself an extra extra point there, which will let me smooth this out. And you can do this, you know, you can do this along the way, like any point you want. You can also open up edge cut. And if you go into edge mode, and I just want this edge here. If I wanted to cut that edge, M and then F for edge cut, and I can just click and drag, and it will actually cut that edge. And since I clicked and dragged, it gave me 2 points, when really all I wanted was 1. So let me just do M and F one more time and click it. And actually, let me undo that and set this to 1. There we go, 1 subdivision. There we go. See, there's so many settings, right? And now I've got this extra point that I can move around. And because I don't have a Fong tag on there, I shouldn't get any kind of weird, like, you're still getting a little weird shading there, but it's kind of interesting. It goes with the low poly thing. But you can get a little extra control that way too. You can actually break your geometry, which is what I did. That's why there's this weird piece here. So let me undo that and do this like a better way. Modeling is not my strong suit, which again is one of the reasons I decided to do a low poly piece. Let's see, let me just grab my, let me just go like this. I'm going to select this. I'm going to select this polygon. I'm going to use my knife tool, and I'm just going to cut right there, and then I'm going to cut right there. There we go. All right, cut. There we go. So now I've actually done this the right way. So now I can use my brush tool, and I want to not select anything, and then I can pull this up, and I can fix any little holes or weird things that happen. That's kind of how you can fix it. You just need to add an extra intersection, right? All right, so let's say we're happy with this. We think this is cool, and I'm not actually happy with it, but I think it's going to be a good enough start. I'm going to rename this mountain. So I'm going to copy it, hop back into scene 1, and paste it in there. And then I'm just going to parent it under one of these pyramids, all right? And what I want to do is go in now, since it's parented, and just zero out the position, set all the scales to 1 and all the rotations to 0. All right, so now it's in about the same, it's in exactly the same spot as this pyramid, and then I just need to scale it way, way, way up because that pyramid is huge. And you can see here it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and there we go. Okay? And so now that it's about the same size visually, you know, I can rotate this thing, right? This thing is pretty long. And so I could actually like scale it back a little bit and try and get it a little bit closer in size to that pyramid that was there. I'm actually transforming the pyramid and not the mountain. I want to transform the mountain. There we go. All right, and I'm basically just trying to match roughly what's going on with the pyramid, right? And now I've got this thing rotated kind of funny, so let me fix that too. Let me unparent it from the pyramid for a second, and then I can just unrotate it like this, so now it'll be oriented correctly again. And let me turn off pyramid 2 now. All right, and so here's my mountain now, okay? And it's pretty much in the same spot as the initial pyramid was. And let me turn off the plant too, so it's not in the way. And what's cool is that now I can actually, like, while I'm here, grab my brush tool. And if, for example, I'm going to have to turn the radius way up now because it's a much bigger mountain. But if I wanted to, I could grab these points and change them even from really far away. So if I want this thing to be pointed a little bit more deliberately at that, you know, at the top of this building here, and then I want like a little bit more of a crease here, and then I want this to actually come out a little bit further like this, it's really easy to do that and see it in context, right? And if we just do a quick render, there you go, nice low poly mountain. Now there's not a ton of detail to that mountain. I think I'd like more, so I'm just gonna select it, and I'm gonna go up to mesh, and I'm going to use a subdivide command, and it will literally just add more geometry to it. I wanna have a little more randomness to this too, so I'm gonna add a displacer to this mountain, and we'll turn the shading to noise. And we will set the height. There we go. You got to crank it because this is a gigantic, you know, mountain now. It's an enormous piece of geometry. It's very far away, which is why, you know, it looks small on screen, obviously. So the height for the displacer is huge. But now that I added that, now I've got all this little faceting. It looks really nice. And even with that displacer on there, I can, let me turn this thing way up. Here we go. I can still go in and add a little bit more variation to this if I want to, right? And kind of really shape this mountain exactly the way I want. All right, and I'm digging that. Cool. Next, I got 2 more mountains. So I'm just gonna copy this one, parent it under here, right? Zero out the coordinates so it's in the same spot. And then I'm going to unparent it. I'm going to move it down. And I'm going to rotate this one on the heading so it's facing a totally different direction. And, you know, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cheat it back a little bit further. So there's going to be a little bit more parallax to it in the end. I kind of want it to feel like it's behind this mountain a little bit. So I'm going to push it back here and just trying to line it up visually with this pyramid, which I can now turn off. Right? Okay, cool. So now this one is feeling a little bit pointy to me. So let me turn the displacer off and see if that's doing it. No, that's not the problem. The problem is I need to, you know, I can play around with spinning it to see if like a different angle is going to work better, right? And I don't know, that's kind of a neat angle, but it's still very pointy. So I'm going to need to just do a little bit of modeling here. So let me go into point mode, and I've got my brush, and I'm just going to pull this one kind of along the edges like this. And I don't want it to be like a pyramid. I really don't want it to look that way. I want it to look like, you know, kind of like a mountain range, kind of irregular with some interesting like nooks and crannies and stuff. And like maybe the top of this mountain is more flat, you know, like kind of like this. All right, so let's just do a quick render and see what this is looking like, okay? All right, we're seeing some weird stuff off in the distance there. So let me actually go and take a peek close up at this thing. I need to flatten this a little bit, right? Let me grab this. Here we go. So I actually I went out into my editor camera so I could come in and see. The good thing is these are so far away from the camera that, you know, as long as they look right, That's all that matters. We're not going to ever get close enough where you're going to see like a lot of the issues that we're creating by modeling it this way. This is going to work just fine. All right, so I flattened the top of that one, and I've gotten a nice, there's like a lot of nice little nooks and crannies on that. Let me move this mouse out of the way. There we go. All right, it's getting a little wonky in there, so I'm going to try to stretch that out a little bit more and kind of push things down. And I may need to pop back to that editor and just come over here and make sure there's nothing like really, really bad happening, like really, truly awful. And I could maybe even like blend in this part a little here where these two things are intersecting. It's going to look all funky in the editor, but when you render it, because there's no Fong tag, it's just going to look like one piece of geometry. See that? There we go. Cool. All right, so let's hop back to our camera. And then we've just got this one more mountain over here. So let me go ahead and these are our pyramids that are off. I can just let me actually start cleaning this up. I'm going to group these and call these off, and then I'm going to copy this mountain under this pyramid, and I'm going to zero out the position. And now this mountain is actually closer. And since it's closer, if I want it visually to maintain the same scale, I'm going to have to shrink it. So let me just grab my scale tool, scale it down like this until visually it's about the same size. I could also push it back a little bit, but I think that's a pretty good spot for it. All right, remove it, turn this pyramid off, stick it in the off group. All right, and then we can just sculpt this thing, right? So this, I'm going to start by just rotating it just to try and find like an interesting angle. That's kind of cool, and then I'm going to lower it so it's in the ground. There we go. And then I'm going to grab my handy dandy brush tool, and I'm just going to come in here, and I want this to, like essentially these mountains are there to point your eye up in this direction. So that's my main concern, is just making sure that they're doing that the contour of that mountain, let me zoom out and come over to this one, right? I want the contour of this mountain to really just be pointing up in this direction. So I'm seeing some like weird stuff over here. And I'm going to, let me kind of look at the building for a minute. So I can come down here with my editor camera and kind of get an idea of what's going on here. I think maybe what I need to do, basically here's the issue I'm having. I'm trying to manipulate this side of the mountain, but I can't actually see it. So what I could just do is just temporarily scale this thing down on X so I can see it, right? And then I can like play with this stuff and push it. And I kind of like, having a little bit of a gradual kind of fall off like that. And then I can scale it back up. Now it's out of the frame again. And this needs to have a little more variation to it. And I want this to really kind of be pointing and almost arching inward like that. And then let's take a look. Let's just do a quick render. Cool. All right. So we've now added a whole bunch of visual detail to this. It looks really nice. So now let's start adding some textures and colors and start to, figure out how this thing's actually going to look. So what I need to do is first, pick some colors. All right. So I want to bring in one of those cool reference images I found on Pinterest. So I'm just going to go, I have it right here. Look at that. It's almost like I knew I was going to need it. And I'm going to bring it down and just drag it right onto Cinema 4D. So it's now in a picture viewer, and I can just bring it over here. Cool. All right. So now I remember seeing this and thinking, these are colors I would not have thought of to use. They're cool. They're really beautiful. And so it might be cool to pull like some kind of this reddish purple color or something like that. So I'm going to make a new material. And one of the things that has annoyed me is the way that this new Mac color picker doesn't really work in Cinema the way I wish it would. So what I'm going to do is just kind of eyeball this. So I need a reddish color, right, with a little blue to it. So that's going to be this side of the color wheel. And for the color, I want it to be fairly saturated. I'm not going to look too much at like the specularity you're seeing on this photo and the shadows and stuff like that. I'm looking for kind of the base color. I think it might be even a little more blue than that. Okay, so this is now our color. And I'm just going to drag this onto the mountains and onto the ground. Then I want the sky. So let me rename this, and let's rename this ground. And I'm going to want a sky. So let's add a sky object, just your standard sky. And let's make a sky texture. And for this, we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to use a gradient. So let's, in the color channel, add a gradient. Pop in here. This gradient needs to go vertically, the way, you know, the sky is darker at the top than it is at the bottom. So let me pop that on there. And let's go into the gradient. And what I want, you know, I like this color. I like that blue color. So I'm going to try and get as close to that as I can. You know, so it's like somewhere in this blue zone, somewhere in there. Maybe a little less green to it. Yeah, there you go. Right, that's pretty close. And that, you know, that feels pretty dark. So that could be the dark color. All right, so the dark color is going to be on one side, and the light color is going to be on the other. So let's now pick a light color. Okay. And one of the things that you got to realize is a sky is actually a giant circle, like a sphere. It goes all the way around your scene. So this horizon line here is actually right in the middle of this gradient. All right, so I need it to start in the middle, and now you can see it kind of fades up into this nice dark color. And look at that. This is actually looking pretty nice, okay? Now, there's a ton of specularity happening here. That's why you're getting all these kind of like white, blown out, glowy looking things. And so we need to come up with kind of a better texture for the ground. And on top of that, in order to really know what a texture is going to look like, I can close this now. In order to know what a texture is going to look like, you need lights. You really do. So let me get rid of this light, because that was kind of our temporary light. We don't need that anymore. What we need now is a sunlight, okay? And eventually I'm going to want that sun to be casting a shadow, hopefully that we can see visibly here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to grab, I've actually got a better idea. Why don't I open up scene 2, which has the light, right? It has this light already on it. So let me just copy that light. I don't need this anymore. I'm going to paste it in here. I need to reset this target tag. The target tag is going to lose its target object when I copy and paste it. So I'll set it to the building again. And there's keyframes on it, which I don't need. So I can get rid of those light keyframes for now. And I'm going to want that to be probably a little higher in the sky, right? And it's casting shadows. And just out of curiosity, let's see what that looks like. Okay, so that's cool. It's like making these nice, kind of silhouettes of the mountain ranges. It's really kind of nice. It's way too dark, obviously, so don't worry about that. We'll deal with that in a moment. But, I want to see the shadow, and I'm not seeing it, and I'm not quite sure that we're going to be able to accurately see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get out of this camera for a minute, and I'm going to come up here over the top. All right, so here's where the camera is down by the plant. So I want to look here, and I want to see, I don't think we're really going to be able to see this very well, but let's try it. What I want to do is turn on shadows in my options. You can kind of see it. If you remember, the issue we had was that when you have a ton of geometry in the scene, you don't get very good look at your shadows, right? And the issue is, let me just do a quick render. The issue is that, remember in shot 2, we actually had to cheat where the plant was to make the shot look prettier. The plant's over here in this shot, but in shot 2, it's actually more over here. So I need to shift where the sun is. And so, one way I could do it is just kind of, actually, I just came up with a better way. This is the beauty of doing this type of quote tutorial. It's a little less planned, and you get a little bit more of a realistic idea of how these things tend to work in the real world. What I want to do, so the plant is turned off. Let me turn it back on. And I'm going to crank that mofo up just so I could see where it is. And then what I'm going to do is open up the interactive render region and move it over there. Okay? Now, I could pretty quickly move this light so that I'm casting the shadow pretty much pointed right at that thing. All right, and then I can come down to the main camera, and I can see what that's going to look like. Cool, okay? So that is casting a nice shadow right on that scene. All right, and now I can just scale that plant back down to the size that it kind of was. It was like kind of there, right? And you can see the shadow. Now I want to now take that shadow and cheat it over a little more even, right? I'm moving it the wrong way. I want it to move back the other way so it looks longer. There you go. And then as the sun gets lower in the sky, that shadow is going to creep forward and actually end up, let me turn off interactive render region now, it's going to end up actually coming all the way across and hitting that plant, which is awesome, okay? And the density of that shadow is pretty low right now, so I'm going to up that because that'll give me a better idea of how it's going to look. That's pretty cool. I know we're going to need some kind of fill light or a backlight to make that plant more visible eventually. We're not going to worry about that yet. All right, so let's turn the plant back off. Now, how do we deal with how dark everything else is? Well, in the real world, even if there was only one light source, the sun, in this scene, light is bouncing off of every single object in the scene, okay? So that, in 3D terms, is called global illumination, okay? That means global. The light bounces off of everything, and that's going to make our render times much, much higher, but you're instantly going to see more detail. What's awesome too is that we're actually getting some bounce from the sky. The sky is blue. It's giving these shadows this beautiful purple bluish tint, okay? Which I love, which I really like. Now it is getting a little bit flat over here for my taste. And so what I probably need to do is actually put kind of a fill light over here. So I'm just gonna put just a normal point light. I'm gonna call this light a fill. And I'm going to move it so that it is basically like kind of up in the air, off to the side of these mountains. And then I can just dial it back, quite a bit. Let's make it just like 20% or something. And when we render with global illumination, that light is going to add a little bit more variation to these mountains, okay? A good way we could check this is to just make sure that we're not rendering every single frame. We're just rendering the current frame. And for my basic crappy render, I'm actually going to lock the ratio and set this down to half HD. So it'll render really quickly, okay? So here is that render with that fill light. And then if I turn it off and do another render, we can compare. And we can all learn something today, right? And it might be a subtle little difference, but, yeah. So here's without and here's with. And you can really tell right there. Having it just brings a little bit of that detail back to these mountains, which is cool. Now they should be dark because the sun's back here. It should be a silhouette, okay? Cool. So the way the environment is looking, and you have to imagine that there's like some nice compositing, and these mountains are far away, so they're kind of hazy. It's going to look a lot better. Another thing I want to do, and I want to look at this now, is I want to add a little grit to this. I don't just want a flat color. I want a little bit of, I want it to feel a little dirty. So what I'm going to do is start by just adding a bump channel, and I'm going to add noise to it. And I'm going to go into the noise, and I'm going to change the default noise type to something like this, Poxo. Poxo is kind of a dirty, noisy feeling texture. And so then if I just hit render, all right, and with global illumination, our renders are going to take a little bit longer. So I'm actually going to start doing renders here. This will make it a little bit easier to compare and contrast to. Another thing we should do is actually turn our global illumination settings to where the caches auto load. And that will make our global illumination renders happen a lot faster, okay? Cool. So look here. This looks terrible, right? And basically what's happening is our noise is set to texture space. And the texture space is, it's basically texture mapped around the entire object. So that noise is mapped around these mountains, which are relatively small compared to the ground, which is huge, right, in the frame. So what I want to do is, instead of texture space, I'm just going to do world space, and I'm going to turn the global scale down to like 25%. And I want to get a lot more fine detail here. Even that's not even close. This maybe needs to be like 5%. I want tiny, tiny little details here, right? Like that. That's what I want. Just fine little details. And you won't really make them out too much on the mountains, but that's okay. And so right now, what this bump is doing, it's just simulating some bump here. It's kind of pretending that there's little grooves and stuff in the sand, and it's just breaking it up a little bit. What I like to do once I have a bump I like is copy that channel, put that same channel in the diffusion channel. And what diffusion does is it makes things less shiny or less reflective. So what I can do is I can just paste that channel like so. And by default, it hits it pretty hard. So I'm going to turn the mix strength down to 0 and then just kind of walk it up looking at this, right? So around like 30%, it's darkening it quite a bit. And I also want to make sure that once I turn reflectivity on, or reflectance on, that I have effect reflection. But look at that. So this is interesting because you've got a low poly scene with some nice texture to it. It looks cool. And with a little bit of depth of field just right at the front of the camera here, I think this is going to look pretty nice, okay? So let's talk about the reflectance channel. I want just a tiny bit of reflectance, okay? Not a lot, but just enough so that it feels like there's a little bit of a polish to these rocks, and maybe it'll reflect, you know, the sky a little bit more interestingly. So I'm going to add just, you know, kind of the default Beckman layer, and that means now I can get rid of this default specular that I don't want, and let's rename this Beckman. And I want very little reflection, like 10%, and specular, I want to bring that down as well. I don't want a ton of specular. And I want to set the roughness up to like, I don't know, let's try like 5%. And let's just do a quick render. And what I'm hoping this gives me is just, yeah, that's a little too much reflection already. But you can see how it's reflecting the sky, and in the ground it is too. So let's see if we turn the reflection down to like 2%, and then roughness up to like 10%. And let's see what that gives us. So this process that I'm going through right now, I would consider look development. And you know, it can be kind of a long, painful process. But doing it this way with the picture viewer is actually a good way to do it. Now we're getting all these little, these specular hits here, you know, when samples kind of hit in the wrong spot. So maybe what would work better is, instead of using a Beckman layer, is to use one of these old Oren-Nayar layers. And these, the Oren-Nayar, I don't know the technical details. It kind of works better for like rougher, smoother things. And so what I can do is just, you know, let's call that Oren-Nayar, and set the roughness up to 10. And now we'll do a render, and hopefully that'll get rid of those terrible little speck highlights that we were getting down there. Yep, that got rid of those. And you know, because this acts a little differently, I may need to up the reflection brightness on this shader now to actually be able to see any kind of blue reflection happening. Ah, there you go. See, it just kind of catches a little bit more of the sky. It's nice. Like here's before, here's after, and you can see that having that reflection, it just helps catch a little more detail here. And this is before we've even turned on ambient occlusion, which is going to help catch even more detail in these shadows back here. Okay. Now, of course, this is not always going to be what the shot looks like. So let's take a look at it when we're here. And, you know, now looking at this, you can see there's another mountain over there that we need to deal with. That one's going to be easier. What I'm going to do is just go ahead. Here is that mountain, by the way. I'm going to take this mountain and copy it. And I'm just going to move that mountain over here. And I'm going to rotate it so it's kind of oriented the same way. And then I can turn this pyramid off and stick it in here. Right? And so now I've got another mountain over here providing like a nice little kind of balance. Right? And let's just do a quick render of this frame and see what it looks like. And what I'm hoping is, through a combination of some lighting and some nice texturing, this shot will look good too. And we'll actually be able to see some of that variation in the ground. Awesome. Yes, this looks pretty much like I'd hoped it would, which is good. All right, and there's a lot of compositing that can happen here too to make this even cooler. But this is working. Okay, like this is a cool scene. You composite this nicely. You put a title over it, because I'm kind of thinking maybe the title's going to go over this shot. I love the way the colors are, and that's even before we've composited anything. Okay. So now we've got a pretty good setup for the scenery. You know, one thing that I may want to do, just thinking about it here, is if you look at the density of these polygons when we're pulling back, right? You kind of look at that, and then look at the density when we're back here. You know, when we get to this shot, these polygons are so much bigger because they're so much closer to frame. We're low to the ground. We've got a wide angle lens. I may want a little bit more visual detail to happen here. Nah, you know what? I was about to really overcomplicate it. I won't, but I'll tell you what I was gonna do, just in case you're curious. What I was gonna do was actually make this ground editable. Let me make a copy of it just to show you. I'll turn this one off. Make this editable so that now I could select, make sure that only select visible elements. And I could select these polygons that are close to the camera like this and come up to mesh, command subdivide. Give them a little more geometry, right? So now back here, we've still got that same visual density, but as we get closer to where that camera is going to land, we've subdivided these, and we subdivided too much. But it's going to give it a little bit more visual density there, you know, which can just kind of add interest, and that's one of the things that's tricky when you're making something that's supposed to look really big. Ah, dang it. I actually really like the way that looks. Oh, man. Well, now I guess I'm going to have to keep it. I just want to make sure that it also looks good in this weird part here where we're kind of starting to transition from the non-subdivided polygons into the subdivided. Is it going to start to look really noticeably different? It may not, because the lighting is sort of flat at that point, and that texture that we placed over everything is going to help give it kind of a uniform scale. So it might still be okay, but we'll know in a second. I have a feeling that's not going to bother me. So if it does, when we end up rendering out this shot for real, we'll go ahead and fix that. But I am pretty happy with the texture and the lighting on this shot right now, and I think we might be able to move on to the building. Before we tackle the building, I want to talk about the stuff that you're not seeing yet. The polish and finishing touches that will really help sell this image when it's all done. At this point, I have a vague sense of where I want this to go visually, and it's not there yet. But rather than spend hours and hours and hours trying to nail the look in 3D, I know I can do a lot of that work in the compositing stage, which comes later. For example, this scene doesn't have much depth because there's no distance fog. And I could add distance fog to my 3D scene, but then I'm kind of locked in to whatever I get in the render. I also want more of a backlight kind of look on the building and the mountains, and a little more contrast in the ground. I might want some subtle depth of field in the foreground. Not too much, because this is a very wide angle lens, but just enough to help you draw your eye back up to the building. And these colors are going to get pushed and tweaked as well, and I'll probably add a vignette and some lens distortion. I'm showing you this because one of the things that blew my mind the first time I did something like this was just how far the image gets pushed in the composite. The raw 3D renders you work with often look nothing like the final product, and you have to get the hang of knowing when to stop yourself from going too far in 3D, and instead saving some of that work for the compositing stage where you can control stuff a lot more easily and quickly. So now, in the next video, I promise we are going to tackle the building.